Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. Today, we are diving into the world of undercover law enforcement with a true expert, Lou Valoze. And listen, guys, Lou isn't just your average agent. He's a retired ATF undercover specialist who took down a massive criminal operations across the country. His work in seizing over 1,000 illegal firearms and dismantling dangerous criminal networks has made him one of the most respected figures in his field. So you may recognize his name from his book, Storefront Sting, An ATF Agent's Life Undercover. But now Lou is here with his new series, Operation Undercover, premiering on ID on November 12th. And I've been lucky enough to get a sneak peek on some of these episodes, and they are wild. So the show is intense. I mean, think drug traffickers, human trafficking stings, high-speed chases, all handled by this guy right here and his team. So I'm really excited to hear Lou's stories now that we have this one-on-one interview, and just dive into what makes undercover work on one of the most demanding and high stakes jobs out there for him, and how he's been able to navigate this. So sorry for that long intro, Lou. I know it can be awkward when you're sitting there waiting for me to shut up, but you've just had such an impressive career, 26 years, I believe, in undercover work. So just to start things off, what even initially drew you to this dangerous job?
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for having me on, first of all. And it's an honor to be here. It's a crazy story that I've told a lot. I was kind of lost when I graduated college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I just happened to I was bouncing around and working at a bank. And actually, someone who I went to college with and I played football with asked me to come over to visit. And when I went over, he was in the Bronx. I went over there, and his brother pulled up, and I didn't even know he had a brother. And he was driving a Corvette, and this is a long time ago, like the Miami Vice days. And he got out of the Corvette, and he had the hair flowing, and he had an open shirt, and there was a Beretta 92F in his waistband. He was like the coolest looking dude I had ever seen. And it turns out he was an undercover agent. He worked for the DEA. And we sat down at the table. He told me about his job, the things that he could tell me. He had just come from overseas, from South America. And the skies opened up. I found my purpose. I said,
Wow.
I want to be an undercover agent. Again, law enforcement wasn't really even on the table for me. But that just one chance encounter is what did it. And it probably from that conversation, you don't just become an undercover agent overnight. That doesn't
Right.
happen. It's probably took me about 8 years, but about 8 years after that conversation, I found myself doing my first undercover deal.
And you went into that knowing that you wouldn't just show up at the NYPD, let's say, and be like, I want to be undercover. You knew it would take time, and you were ready to wait and be patient.
You have to pay your dues. You have to prove yourself.
Right.
Like anything else, you have to be in the right place at the right time. There's a little bit of luck involved, of course. And yeah, you earn the right to work undercover. Undercover work is, less than 1% of law enforcement ever does any undercover work. It's not a
Wow.
huge component. And so it's very specialized, very specific. But I just knew that it was what I was born to do.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I just think about how I would be the worst. If you wanted me to wear a wire, I would blow everything. I would just be like messing with it. I would be like, is this, I mean, I just have such immense respect for what you do. And before we get into the show, because, I was not familiar with your story. So when you say, and I understand how it's like, I feel like I tell this story a lot. People have heard it. My audience and myself included, I haven't heard any of this. This is fascinating. So please include every detail and don't think that you're repeating yourself at all, because you are not to us.
Okay.
So in real life, and I know this show is real life, but I guess I mean in your experience, what was the most wild undercover experience that you had where you thought maybe you would lose your life?
During my career,
Mhm.
um, there was a case in Chicago where I was undercover, and it was what we call a cold intro, where I didn't have an informant introducing me. It was cold. I approached this person on my own, which is the hardest way to work undercover, right?
Mhm.
With an informant making an introduction, it's a lot easier, obviously, because
Yeah.
you have a little credibility right off the bat. And this guy was super dangerous. He was an outlaw biker. He was a member of an outlaw motorcycle gang, and he was also in the mafia. In Chicago, they call it the outfit, the
Ugh.
Italian mafia. And it was the first time that we had seen really the mafia and the outlaw biker world working together. And so it was a big deal.
Wow.
And I ended up, and it took a long time. He did not trust anybody. This guy, he was very smart, but I ended up getting in with him. He had a business, and it was pretty much a front for, he was doing every crime you can think of was happening out of that business. And I ended up inside that business with him, and it was totally fortified. He had every kind of scanner, cameras, everything you can imagine. So I could not wear a monitor. I can only wear recording devices because they were afraid that his scanners would catch the frequency of my monitor. So I was really on an island when I was in there. No one could hear me. The cover teams couldn't even get close because even the local police would call him and tip him off if they thought they saw feds out there, because there was some even corrupt law enforcement in this area. And when I was sitting in there with him having a discussion once, the recording device that my agency had provided me with, it was actually a watch, and it was a strange looking watch. And he looked at it and he started asking me about it. And he just happened to be a jeweler by
Oh,
trade.
I'm sweating. Sorry.
And I actually had to hand it to him and let him handle it. And
Did
and
you
this
pee
is
a little bit? Were you peeing just a little? Like, I'm kidding.
I was
Like,
extremely uncomfortable as I'm watching this guy examine, my undercover, recording device, um, and it, it was a really bad situation because I knew that the only thing my cover team could do at that point was to avenge my death. There's no way they were going to get in there, before something bad happened. So that moment right there was my scariest moment undercover, where I really thought that I might not get out of this one.
so what? I mean, he gave it back to you. He just goes, "Oh, cool," and he gave it back.
It's a crazy story. He looked at it, and we actually had cameras in his place, um, so they could see real time. They couldn't hear anything, but they could see real time. And as soon as I left, he went on the computer and started Googling it. So I Googled it. And when I Googled the device, the first thing that came up was the Spy Gear website.
Shit. No.
So it, probably wasn't the best move my agency ever made, utilizing that particular piece of equipment. Uh, but, what we did was we got the same exact device without the recording uh, the,
Yeah.
component to it. And I went back the next time and I gave it to him. I said, "Hey, you were so interested, you seem so interested in this watch. You can have it. Here you go." So, and then when he took it apart, there was no recording
So
device
he
in there.
did take it apart.
Yeah.
You know that he did that. Why did he tell you, or just please bear with me because I'm an idiot when it comes to this stuff. Like I don't. So, are you assuming he did, or like he just?
Well, they had done what we call a black bag operation. They had gone in there, obviously with warrants from a
Yeah.
federal judge, and put cameras up inside his place of business. They had
Oh,
secreted cameras, so we could see him doing all this. Uh, yeah, it
wow.
was yeah, it
Okay.
was a uncomfortable situation for sure, and he was a bad guy.
I mean that. Oh my god, that's definitely out of a movie. You literally lived a movie, but I'm sure. once you got out of that situation after he took your watch, I mean, what does your body even do after that? Where you think you're probably gonna die execution style on the spot, and it's like, I mean, it's like you let down, but God, how?
Well, the hardest part is that when you're working undercover, and this was not early on, and I had already befriended this guy, and we had been together for months and months, and he was just not. He was very smart. He didn't
Yeah,
totally trust anybody. But when you're working undercover, you're in the red all the time, right? Like an engine that's revving high, you're in the red, but you can't show that.
mm,
You
mm,
can't let that show.
right,
So when you have a situation like that, and when it really revs up all the way, uh, when you get out of it, and hopefully you get out of it alive,
yeah,
uh, you need to. It's so important to dump that and to do something. Whatever kind of techniques you have in your life, whether it's exercise or
yeah,
walking to someone who's been there, peer support. It's so important to do that so you can dump that out, so you can continue and keep going. We tend to internalize it and keep it in, and that usually leads to
mm,
just bad things,
bad,
in
yeah,
turn.
totally, and being friends with many people in law enforcement, I know a lot of them are sober just so they will not abuse drugs and alcohol after these high stress situations. And the same with prosecutors and just high profile attorneys. It's almost like you get out of these situations where you can't exactly talk to anyone about it, right?
Right.
Like nobody understands that you just possibly saw a body of a 4-year-old child in this state, and it's almost like, what do you do? Where do you turn to? And a lot of people will unfortunately turn to alcohol. So I think that's a really important thing that you just mentioned. But Lou, just getting into some of the episodes, episode 1, I don't want to give anything away, but it takes place in Alabama.
Yep.
And I think that a huge problem in our country, obviously, is the amount of fentanyl coming through from Mexico, China, God, wherever you, not being political, sorry, wherever you want to say that it's coming
Right.
through. But how does this, I guess, this differ from, I guess, other situations and other substances that you've had to sort of take down? Because fentanyl is so dangerous. I mean, the tiniest amount is so dangerous.
Yeah. There's a reason why we call fentanyl. We don't really call it an overdose. We call it a poisoning, because
Mm,
fentanyl is poison. And
mm,
when people die, and they're dying every day from fentanyl, it is a poisoning. And for that particular episode in Oxford, Alabama, they're in a tough spot. They're right off Highway 20, which is pretty much in the middle between Atlanta and Birmingham, and it's a major drug trafficking route. And these drug traffickers have made Oxford one of their stops. And
yeah.
so highway interdiction is not enough to combat this problem. So the Oxford Police Department, they have an undercover unit, and they are proactively addressing the fentanyl issue there. And they let us in. And when I say they let us in, we were in their vehicles. We were right there on the scene as they're conducting these undercover operations. And a lot of this is happening in the hotels, right off I-20 there in their
Mm,
town. And it was amazing to watch the dedication of these men and women. And this is their community. They all live there in that area, and they are doing this, to stop people from dying in their community, and their hearts and soul are in it. And you can see that when you watch these operations.
yeah, it's so horrible. I'm from a very small town in New Hampshire, but right outside of my town is a place called Manchester, New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And it's been shocking to see the amount of people that I went to high school with who have overdosed from like they come from good families, they are well educated, and look, it's just like they didn't expect this. They did not. I mean, I like two hands I can count the number of overdoses that involve fentanyl, and it's horrible, and I don't think people are taking it seriously. So my hope is that people can watch something like this, which I hate to say it, but it's like, and how do I say it, respectfully, but it's entertaining to watch something like
Yeah.
this, even though the subject matter is so heavy. But and we kind of just talked about this, but in the St. Charles episode, something happens. I mean, a first responder kind of gets caught in this situation, and without giving anything away, but it's like, how does someone manage that in that situation when it comes to trafficking?
Yeah, unfortunately, first responders, they're people too, and they have issues with substance abuse. And this particular first responder, there was a substance abuse issue, illegal drugs, and this person got caught up into the illegal drug trafficking scene and the sex trafficking scene.
Mm.
And the police officers, when you see the episode, I believe this is the episode where I say, in all my years of undercover work, I've never seen anything like this.
Mhm.
And they didn't enjoy this. The men and women we were working with on the police force didn't enjoy doing this, to a fellow first responder. But they Lady Liberty has to be blind, and they did what they had to do. And again, when you see this, it is almost hard to believe, but they did what they had to do. They went on with the investigation. The undercover female officer did an incredible job, and
Yeah.
there was a takedown, and it's pretty eye-opening, and it shows just how far the drugs have permeated into all aspects of our society, and no one is safe. Even sometimes people on the right side of things, they're not safe from this. It's affected everybody.
Right. And it's like these situations are just so shocking. It's like you just
Yes.
don't expect them to unfold the way they do. And so, yes, where it was different from being in a situation yourself and your life in danger, I'm sure it's just not easy to watch something like that. Now, I have to ask you a personal question. I saw on your Instagram you're married. I mean, your wife, she must be so tough to have you go out there, and she's at home or wherever she is, wondering, like, are you going to come home? That must be horrible for her. I can't imagine. So how does she deal with all of this?
My wife is the strongest person I've ever known, and she is very successful. She's a physical therapist. She has her own career, and she was never the kind of spouse who was, sitting around, wondering or worrying about what I was doing. I never talked about what I was doing at home.
Okay.
We have
Okay.
our kids, and she just, and that is really the best way to be. If your spouse does this kind of work, if you sit around thinking about it all the time, you'll drive yourself crazy. So,
Yeah.
I did my best never to bring my job home. I was gone for long periods of time,
Mhm.
and I found someone who knew how to handle that.
Yeah. What
Luckily,
about what about your kids? I mean, how much did they know when they were growing up? And I don't know how old they are, but like I assume now they must be like, "Whoa, my dad's a badass. I did not realize when I put my little head down on my pillow, daddy is out there with the most heinous people that you could ever imagine."
they when they were growing up, they had no idea really. They knew I was law enforcement, but again, I never brought it home, and I never really talked about it. I tried to be there as much as I could, which was pretty difficult doing what I did.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they actually think I'm cool now. I don't know if Dad is ever really that cool. But they watch my when I'm on a show or a podcast, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think somewhere deep down inside, maybe they think I'm a little bit cool. I don't know.
Are
They
you
don't show
kidding
it.
me? I
Yeah.
would be like, I want to hear every single story. I mean, literally before bed, I would be like, Dad, over here right now. I want to hear how you took down this bad guy. I mean, maybe that's just me because I'm twisted and weird, but
Yeah, I don't know. When I did John Bernthal's podcast, the only thing my son said to me was, he was like, man, that guy's so much cooler than you are, Dad. And I was like, wow, really?
Okay, well, he plays a Marvel character or whatever the hell. What is it,
Right.
DC? I mean, that's not fair.
Yeah, I know.
Please. I mean, you do this in real life. So I would say that to your son. Like, you got an actor over here. Yeah, sure, he's cool and everything. But then you got a guy like you who risks his life every day. And that's what I mean. I'm so thankful for people like you, truly, because it's just something that I personally can't comprehend. I can't comprehend I don't know. I'm just not. I like to think of myself as brave. I like to think of myself as I'll say how I feel, but then when it comes down to it, I don't say anything that I wouldn't necessarily act upon. So that's where I stop
Yeah.
myself, and I'm like, okay, you're not that brave, I guess. Um,
Well,
but
that right there is why I am so proud of Operation Undercover, because
yeah,
when people watch it, they will be amazed at these men and women of law enforcement. And when you actually get to see, because it's never been done before, where you actually get inside a real undercover operation as it's happening, and
right.
when you get to see how brave they are, when you're going to see them as they're walking into some hotel room, and they're trying, their goal is to buy a kilo of fentanyl or meth, or cocaine, and they're risking their lives. And once they're done with this deal, it's on to the next one.
Yeah,
It's
right.
so amazing. That's why I'm so proud of the show. When you watch, what these men and women do, and they're fearless about it, and they do it over and over. And there's only one reason they're doing it. They're not doing it for fame, certainly not doing it for fortune.
Hmm.
They're doing it to make their community safer. And it's incredible to watch. I can't wait for the reaction from people.
Yeah, you make a great point. You can do a lot of things to be famous. You can do a lot of things for attention. This type of work, why the hell would you do that for for fame? Literally, there's a lot of things that are much easier to do besides risk your life with these nefarious characters. And I think about the women that have to go and act as prostitutes, for example, and be around the. And I mean, my stomach just drops. It literally drops thinking of them in these situations with these disgusting Johns who, I mean, God knows. It's like, and I feel like we don't necessarily hear about the situations that possibly went wrong, I guess, when it comes to that stuff. But you know what? Maybe we should. And maybe we should, acknowledge that these women are also doing incredible work.
Yeah, let me just say this. I mean, first of all, some of the most incredible undercover agents I ever worked with were female when I was on the job, and we saw this, in Operation Undercover. You're going to see this again. First of all, undercover work is a little bit thankless, right? It's not really, no matter who's doing it, it doesn't really get out there, and you don't do it for accolades, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But specifically when it comes to women, they every single female that we feature in this show, they are not just doing the sex trafficking. They're on the streets. They are buying huge quantities of drugs undercover, huge quantities of guns undercover. They're doing amazing things, everything, that a guy can do, and even sometimes more, because sometimes it's easier for a female to get access because the bad guys don't suspect the female as much as they do
Of
a
course.
man. So they can sometimes get into places and situations that a man can't, and they do incredible work. In the Pueblo, Colorado episode, you're going to see one of the best female undercovers in the country out there right now. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm excited. And this is just a personal question, and you don't have to answer this. Have you, and well, I feel like I know the answer. Whatever. I'm like, just ask it. Have you ever had to do drugs to, I guess, prove that you're cool? Like,
Yeah.
and then how did that affect you inside personally? And do you go into these situations thinking that, okay, I might have to snort a little meth? And I know that sounds very blunt, and yeah.
Yep. I get asked that question all the time, and the simple answer is that you're not allowed to.
Oh,
You're not allowed to, unless
oh.
it's life and death, and your life is on the line. You're not allowed to. And if you were ever to do that, the case is over.
But how do you
You
not
no
do it?
longer, well, if you do it, you no longer have any credibility on the stand, and the case is over. So the truth of the matter is, most drug dealers, I'm not talking about low level, I'm talking about successful drug dealers,
Yeah.
do not do drugs.
They don't get high on their own
Yeah,
supply.
most big time criminals do not do drugs. You have to have a clear head. If you're going to stay alive and stay out of prison, you have to have a clear head. And I was always portraying myself as a big time criminal. So
Oh.
it's easy, and you're strong about it. And in your response, when you're offered, and I was offered countless times, hundreds and hundreds of times, and you stay true to yourself, and you say, listen, no, I don't do that. I'll make money off it. I don't do it. I need a clear head. I can't get,
And they
wrapped
buy
up in
that.
it.
They're
Absolutely. Yeah.
see, I guess I didn't put together that you wouldn't be a credible witness on the stand when you actually take down the entire operation and there's an actual trial. I guess well, what about the women on the street who are, working with these pimps and stuff? All they do is push drugs on them, I feel like, so they can perform better. I mean, how did like that? I guess I'm so confused at how you would be trustworthy to these people when you are saying no to drugs.
Yeah. There are a lot of people at all levels of crime, especially in the upper levels, but even on the street level, who this is a business. And to be successful in business, you have to have a clear head. And they do not do drugs. And
No,
as long as you're confident and strong in your answer, and you always have to be able to walk away, right? You say, listen, that's not me. No, I'm not into that. If you got a problem with that, hey, good luck. Move on to the next person. And
okay.
The bottom line in undercover work is that the criminal, the bottom line is always money. It's never ideology.
Mhm.
It's always money. They want your money. And so as long as you give the right answers and you're confident in your answer and you're true to yourself, it's always going to come back to whether or not we can do this deal so they can make money.
Okay. And just to be clear, I wasn't saying that they should do drugs to fit in or anything. I'm not pushing drugs. I'm just saying I found that really, what you were just saying, really hard to believe that they would be trustworthy to these people that do so many drugs. But as you were saying that, I thought of something in my head that I would say if I was a woman on the street, I would say, sorry, I'm trying to get my kids back and I'm getting drug tested or
Yep.
something. Okay, so maybe I would be a good undercover. Do you like that? Are we on this? Okay.
Let's sign you up. All right.
Right? It sounded really believable and I'd be very
Absolutely.
confident. Okay. All right, fine. So they could say something like that. Okay. Well, Lou, this has been so this has been so informative and just so nice to speak with you. And I'm so excited, as you said, for everybody to watch Operation Undercover on Investigation Discovery to get an idea of what you go through and what these other men and women go through and just how you risk your life. And like you said, you don't do it for any other reason than to keep your community safe. So yeah, in the episode notes of the show, I'm going to plug your book, I'm going to plug the show, and if there's anything else that you just want people to know about you or anything about the show, please just plug away.
To say the show is adrenaline packed is an understatement. It's, again, the reason I'm so proud of this, and I can't wait for November 12th and to watch it on Discovery ID, and you can stream it on Max, is that it's original. There's never been anything like this. And not only there's no reenactments. These are real undercover cases that are happening real time. But also, the easier thing to do would have been to just embed ourselves with one department and do a whole season. But to make it even more exciting, we said, man, let's go to different places all over the country. And that made it really difficult to do that logistically.
Yeah.
But we were able to pull it off. And when you see the work that these amazing men and women are doing and the risks they're taking and the unknown and the excitement, and what happens, when everything was planned and the plans were so good, but things still go wrong. And you're going to see that happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see when after the undercover deal and it's time to take down the dealer and they try to block him in, but he gets away. And what ensues is this incredible car chase and getting out of the car and running through swamps. And it's unbelievable. This is all real. And it's happening right before your eyes. I just can't wait for people to see it.
That's so amazing. Guys, did you hear that? It's all real. All real. You heard it from Lou Valoze himself. Well, Lou, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a pleasure. If you don't mind hanging out for just 1 second, I will chat with you offline. Thanks
Sure.
again. Because of that 9-dash line. And Ted Cruz said, look, if you're not into geopolitics,